Hello, Catherine Newell.
Good morning.
Where are
Oh,
you? Where are you saying hello to us from?
I am in the south of England, in Hove, near Brighton.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah.
very much for having taking the time to be with us today. The reason that I started these conversations is that during, deep lockdown, I got this sense that everyone was sort of revolving in their own heads, and there was a massive difference between the headlines and then actually what these very private and very deep and intimate concerns about what it was to live life now. And I wanted somehow to bridge the gap. And because I know people involved in storytelling, I thought, well, I'll chat with some of my friends and see what comes out. Now, you're not technically a storyteller, but if I wasn't involved in storytelling, I wouldn't have met you. And we got in touch because of your work with shadow work and archetypes. And that has been a source of insight to me and to people over here who you came to see in April. So because of your work and your insight, I thought we'd have you here today. So welcome.
No, it was lovely, and it was fabulous coming to Amsterdam and working with you over there. Thank you very much for that experience. It was beautiful.
It's great, wasn't it? Let's talk about that for a bit, because it was like the last day and we were changing text. We were like, can we actually go ahead? And we just decided on the Thursday, it was on the Saturday, and on the Thursday morning we said, look, the government regulations are in place, we're going to follow, it's a group of less than 100. But the situation changed so rapidly that by the Saturday morning, on the 16th of March, some people said, look, I've got a cold, I'm staying home. Some people said, look, I just don't want to risk it. And then we had this hardy crew of 14 down from about 20 who came in. But it was bizarre, wasn't it? Do you remember, like the distancing and the I don't know, what was your impression of what was going on then? Just the intensity.
I mean, I came over to Amsterdam thinking, is this wise? Will I get home? And it did. It just felt like, doors were shutting, sort of feel the clang of doors shutting by the minute. All the museums shut while I was there. Everything was closing down. And it was extraordinary to go ahead and do it. And obviously very quickly altered the way we did it. So no passing of anything, keeping distance. Everything was distanced out even then.
Because usually you'd change the kind of exercises you could do.
Well, for sure, you might touch hands, or you would pass things, or hug. That thing we used to do, hugging. So yeah, very quickly it changed to keep distance and keep people safer. And then obviously, as I left Amsterdam, everything was shutting down. I thought I was going to get a meal at the airport, but all the restaurants were closed, and it really, I felt like the doors were clanging behind me, and I was just so grateful to get home. And then we've been locked down ever since. So no more. That was the last workshop I did.
I felt that we were like Indiana Jones, where he leaves his hat and we just grabbed the hat as the stone tomb came tumbling down.
Yeah, no, it was very profound. And profound as well, the experience of leaving Amsterdam, that everything was shut, and then the laughability of getting back to the UK, where they were still selling, the pasty shop was still open, handing over a pasty to me. I don't know, there was something quite comedic about that. England took a while to catch up and shut down.
Okay.
But yes, that was
the last time. So you've been locked down, and I have a vision of you behind your laptop being a sort of a lightning rod for the emotions of the world as people kind of call in from all these different places around the world. So what we'll do is we'll come into, we'll talk about shadow work in a bit, but I'd love to just hear, what have you been experiencing from behind the laptop?
It has. So obviously a lot of my work would have traditionally been in my beautiful room. So I have a loft, a converted loft. So usually my work is one-to-one with people relatively local. And we run these weekends, shadow work weekends, which really are quite amazing. And so then lockdown happened and just everything I already had some clients from around the world online, but basically everything shifted over to the computer. And the changes have been quite extraordinary. There's been a lot of things that I've lost. So a lot of my senses with people are lost. So I can't smell people. I know that might sound odd, but I think we actually use our sense of smell a lot more than we know. So the sense of smell of people, or the vibration of people, the sense of being able to track their bodies. I had one client who said, "I love Zoom. It means I can pick my fingers with impunity and no one can see." She could have her things that kept her stable without them being witnessed, having to hide them.
Did you see the Irish politician who, this guy from Ireland who came in, he gave a speech to the European Parliament without his trousers on. He set the he set the camera at the wrong angle, and he was just he'd put on a shirt and it looked like he had nothing on, and he claimed that he'd come back from a run and had to nip on a shirt before this meeting.
Well, as it goes.
That's what we've been up to, but we've all been doing that.
Yeah, I've got my pyjama bottoms are still on. So yeah, there's been a lot of change. So there's been a lot of things that have been lost, but then other things that have become, really sharply into focus. And my clientele has become very global. So not just people that are local in Britain or whatever.
Where geographically?
Pardon?
Where geographically are you talking with?
States, Canada, France, Spain, Swedish for some reason, but even Australian. So, and also, some of the workshops that I used to run in a different area of my life went online. And so things that I was doing locally in schools and so on has now become global. So that's been curious as well, putting on workshops and working out where the time zones are so that the New Zealanders can be included as well as the Canadians. It's been, so the whole of my work has changed. So it's all gone online and it's one-to-ones. And obviously we can't do a 5-hour day. Normally I might work for 5 hours with one person in the room. And it's a bit like the opportunity to really do a deep dive. It's like being able to do open heart surgery instead of rearranging their hair. But I can't do 5 hours on a Zoom call. It's too much. So I've been learning to do what I do, but in sort of smaller chunks. But it's been very effective.
What kind of, I don't want to use the word, but I'm going to say issues. What has been surfacing for people?
I think it's, I think often people end up in the room with me because they get to a certain age where for the whole of their life, they've been thinking, it'll work out when I'm older, or, I'm just not old enough yet, or it'll come in time. I just need to be patient. Or there's a sense of things aren't working out because I've just met the wrong person, or, it's their fault, or, there's something about blaming out there. And then eventually get to an age where you go, I'm actually not doing what I said I wanted to do. What is going on? And I'm getting too old now to think that it's because I'm not old enough yet. I am, and I'm still not doing it. Or, how is it that all my 3 partners have all been blah, blah, blah? What's the common denominator here? Oh, that'll be me. So I think a lot of people end up in some sort of support work because they've clocked that it might not be everyone else's fault and it might be something they're doing. So they end up trying to unpack what that is. And I think that quality has never been so powerful as now, because as you've been locked into your house, you haven't got your usual distractions to sort of not mind. So go and get drunk, or go out, or go and see something, or go to the cinema, and sort of avoid and ignore the discomfort you might be feeling. But also you can no longer blame everyone else because no one else is there. It's just you. So if you're in your stew, in your space, not feeling great, it's kind of your stuff. And so I think there's been a lot of people, I've experienced a lot of people getting in touch because they're really dealing with themselves in this locked in space. and it becomes really, really clear that it's them that's doing the thing they don't like, and they can neither distract nor blame it on others because there is no one else.
Mm.
And I think it shows, it puts into sharp relief the state of your life when it's reduced like this.
So your training that you've done, I mean, you spent, is it 5 or 6 years?
I think it's been more like a decade. It's been
A decade of training, and you give workshops that are like the introduction goes on for a weekend. So I'm going to ask you to take that and tell us, what is shadow work in the sort of, for people that don't know, how do you introduce it to people who haven't really heard of it before?
Shadow work is based on Jung's work, Jung's archetypes, and a fabulous man called Cliff Barry took a lot of those works, and carpet work, which is where people unpack their issues on a carpet with the support of others. Gosh, how do you, in a soundbite, explain it? I have found it really helpful. I've been in a lot of counselling over the years, a lot of different kind of modalities, and I stumbled into shadow work being used by a number of different practitioners in different places, and thought, what is this? It actually really, really works for me. And I think there's something fabulous about shadow work in that I don't talk about me doing this and me doing that. I talk about the parts of me that do different things. And for my money, my experience, I find it really helpful to unpack me. So I talk about, instead of saying, oh, I fancied doing this, but I didn't do it because, I say there was a part of me wanted to do that, but there was another part that really got in the way, and then there was another part that, and suddenly it becomes clearer because I'm unpacking the parts of me, looking at the dynamic. And it becomes a lot clearer as well when I distance myself from these parts as if they were players on a stage.
Wow.
And I can discuss what's going on over there rather than it all being confused in me.
So it takes the basic idea that we are lots of different voices, and some of those we give play to at different times. And then, as you say, you're sort of really stepping and really making this a theatre, and sort of asking different people to say, oh, and what did you think about that? Because we did online sessions together before we'd met in person. And yeah, so that was a deep emotional psychological inquiry where I felt I was given a template to just even, I could make sense of one thing, and then after that one thing, I could lead to another thing, could lead to another thing. But instead of this maze of fog or anxiety or just, or, that I could just, it allowed me to focus in on one thing and just look at that a bit better. And using the archetypes of sovereign, lover, magician, warrior to begin with, it just simplifies the savannah to a great deal. And then on the other side, you got you listening. That's the point, is not just the methodology, is the presence of someone who's able to help support you in your own listening. That's from my side.
I think the thing I've come to learn about, what I hope is true about shadow work, is that in so many ways it's quite an easy thing to understand, but actually it's deeply complicated. And even all these years in, I still feel like I'm learning and mastering the machinery of it, the tool that it is. It's a very flexible
tool. Difficulty. What is that? Why is it complex?
Oh, it's I know. I came up with an analogy the other day. It's a bit like a Rubik's Cube, and you sort of think, oh, it's really easy. Look, all the reds are now there, but the rest of the cube is now a total mess. And you kind of go, oh, no. And so for me, explaining the sides is quite straightforward, but balancing a soul so that all of the sides are as you would love them to be is really difficult. So the idea in shadow work is that, you are a king or a queen, or I am a king and a queen, and the idea is that you have your masculine and your feminine equally balanced, ideally, but that we are sovereigns overseeing our lives, and that we consult our wise magicians to help us to think, and we consult the wisdom of our guts, our lover, to feel, in order to then wisely, compassionately, playfully instruct our warriors to go out on the land and act and do on the earth. So the sovereign is all about being, the magician is all about thinking, the lover is all about feeling, and the warrior is about doing. Simple, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's simple.
Yeah, really nice. So yeah, I'm going to be a queen, and I'll think, and I'll feel, and then I'll go out and do stuff. Straightforward. And yet, due to our not just our upbringing and not just the things that happened, but also I really get everything that came through with us. It's not just nature nurture. There's something about the epigenetics, and there's something about our inherited histories that comes through. And so it greatly influences and gets in the way of us just doing our thing and just thinking and feeling and doing and having a jolly life. All sorts of things are getting in the way. And I think this is what can be quite sneaky. So going back to, clients turning up, wanting to work, the things that can come up, I mean, it can be gross things that have happened. So, really gross episodes, whether it be injury, accident, abuses of all manner of kinds. So something significant could have happened, and so they're turning up, wanting to work. But other times it's generally the sort of 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds who still aren't relating to people well, or not finding that they're not happy in their career lives and wondering how is it they ended up doing this job. And we track it back, and it's such subtle things. And it can be the episode where your rubber was stolen by the other kids when you were 5, and all the children laughed, and the teacher didn't handle it properly. And at that moment, that 5-year-old made very, very strong, powerful decisions about how they were going to move forward, and it entirely changed the trajectory of their future lives, to the point they end up on a conversation with me talking about the episode with the rubber.
40 years later.
Yeah, and it seems so silly and tiny and irrelevant, but actually right there, the whole trajectory of the life shifted course. And so it's about sometimes going back and, see what I'm saying? So it's not just like, massive car accident, massive trauma. No, it can be that, or doing a performance for the family at Christmas and slipping on the carpet and then hiding in a cupboard, and that's it, never going to perform again.
Yeah,
these
so
things.
it gets really intimate to realise the power that such an seemingly insignificant incident could have on the decisions you've made. We've built our house from these tiny little things. I remember for me it was being afraid of, like a tiny little boy being afraid of the dark, and he was still going, look, no one's actually coming to say hello, no one's actually coming to look after me. And that was a foundational personality who was, conducting a whole orchestra of supposedly sophisticated thought, feelings, very high end things, but it was, at the end, it was just a little boy who wondered why, when he cried, people weren't there that quick enough. Not that I was neglected in any way, but that was the impression of that little boy. Absolved my parents of any blame.
Yeah, and one can set one store, go, no one's coming, there's no point to call, I'm never going to call, I'm never going to feel that lack of responsiveness ever again, I'm never going to ask again. It's very humbling and very touching and very exciting to discover these moments where the cogs changed and recalibrate them, and then from then on life can be very, very different and a lot richer and a lot happier, a lot more functional. The other thing that I do want to mention that is coming up in the room is past lives stuff. And, not having been a particularly past livesy kind of a person, I cannot fault the evidence, which is that sometimes it is a gross, obvious thing that's being unpacked. It can be a tiny thing like my pink rubber got stolen, and from then on I never ever blah, blah, blah. And then other things where you get clients who turn up and go, I just don't get it. My childhood was really nice. Got a great family. Really, really lucky. Everything at my fingertips, and still I'm just not doing things, and I can't reason it. I can't explain. And so then we unpack that. So, you know, the part that yearns, the part that wants to speak up, the thing that's in the way. And in that place where this is where as well, speaking therapies, I think, you know, they certainly have their place, and we start our sessions in a speaking place, but we go into the body, we go into a very felt experience. And, you know, I might have a person on all fours in a particular place because that's where it feels right to be. And they're trying to speak up to the big thing that is stopping. Yeah, and it all sounds a bit quirky in this format. So it might be, you know, that they're in this space. And I'll say, so what is it that needs to be said? You know, go inside. What's coming up? What's in there? What's the truth in you? And, you know, these piercing blue eyes looked straight at me and said, I cannot, they will be killed. And, you know, you kind of, what? You know, in our sort of practical modern life, kind of, what do you mean they're going to be killed? You know, but it's like, no, I get that. Somewhere in your body, there was an episode, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Epigenetics is that our 14 generations of experience comes knocking down through the it's complicated to explain, but through affecting the way we perform in this life. And it's completely conceivable that at some point, because somebody said something, somebody got killed, somebody, you know, something disastrous occurred. And that comes through in the body. The body's memory is still
So
holding.
The DNA holds the information of previous generations, and
it's not that apparently the DNA or the genetics cannot be altered, but there's something about these little trapdoors that affect our propensity to fear, our propensity to be bold in our lives. So although the structure, our genes cannot be affected that easily, the way we respond to things, we become more or less sensitized. So if there has been, you know, gross trauma in our families of origin, and most of us, let's be clear, that will have happened, that's affecting us too. So I found it fascinating with clients that, as I say, there's gross trauma, there's these weird little episodes that happened when we're young, and then there's also this challenge of being present to and open to a sense of how our histories come through in us as well. And so obviously our brains can't know that, our sentient frontal cortex can't know that stuff because it didn't happen in this lifetime, but our bodies do. And our bodies hold an awareness of a much older truth about us and where we've come from.
It's really interesting. What I want to ask about that is, I suppose what's happening now is that we're, as people of European origin, we're being asked big questions about how previous generations have acted. And what you're saying is that those attitudes somehow will be in our bodies now. Mm. And I'm interested in your views on, as white people, how can your work sort of lead an inquiry to sort of free these layers of bias, I think, that are holding back the world, I think, holding back human capacity in so many areas.
It's difficult, isn't it? I've really enjoyed the work of Malcolm Gladwell, his book Blink, and looking at that and seeing how subconsciously entrenched these isms are. Where to begin with this? I think one of the things that we need to recognize as humans is just how frightened we are. Absolutely terrified. You know, we think that we're the biggest predator and we're safe. We're so not. We're scared. We're so scared. And I think that all of these things are about being frightened and desperate for control, desperate to be ruling over otherness. And I feel very clear that I acknowledge that I am sexist, I am racist, I am ableist, and I'm an absolute disaster to the environment. And if I at least attempt to put that out front, not in shadow, go, I'm not racist, some of my best friends are black. You know, if I stop trying to say, no, I'm not, I'm a feminist, but then trying to stuff that away and say, no, I'm a good person. No, I'm not. I am really vulnerable to and soaked in all of these tenets and behaviours and things that have come before. I'm very clear about my privilege. I'm very clear about my, understandable to some degree reluctance to give it up. Again, with things like shadow work, it's so great in that it's hard to describe without a huge precursor, but there's something brilliant about being able to unpack me. That means that I find it less shaming. So there'll be a part of me that knows that it's important that we are equal and that we give everyone opportunities. And there's a part of me that is still trying to fight my corner by whatever means I have available.
Is not doing that. There's part of you, part of us that is not doing that. And I think if what I hear, what you're saying is that the first layer is if the denial is still coming in front, if the I'm not, and that's not me, then that is already just, you're smothering the parts of you that are that, right? So the resistance has to go, and then there's the acceptance. There's that lovely thing that Moore writes in his book he says, so when you're looking at an archetype, don't think am I like this? So we could say racist, privileged, all this kind of thing. There's still a thing that can be seen in an archetypal way. So don't think, am I like this, but think, how am I? And then only then can you seriously look at the question. Like, how am I exercising privilege, control due to, the color of my skin? And then you get, and then it's like, looking under the bed and finding just the horrendous nature of the psyches that we walk around. Sorry to be judgmental, but the stuff that is under there, you wouldn't want to admit to in public. Yeah.
But I remember as a younger woman being quite depressed about being me, as I came to realise that, my country's wealth was built on blood, rape, pillage and slavery. I've always felt embarrassed being, ex-boyfriends of mine were African or Pakistani, and I witnessed how they were spoken to, and I found it just cripplingly upsetting. And yet I also get that we, buying cheap clothes with slave labour in foreign countries, and I'm going, oh, it's only a tenner. Brilliant. It's like, well, how can you, at one hand, care about this person being treated like that, and then go and buy an item of clothing that has been made in such a way, and think that that's terrific? The mess that it is, and always understanding that it's impossible to live in the West without funding environments for people that I would find really distressing to witness. But then that's true as well about the food industry, isn't it? There's so many things that we continue to do knowing how upsetting they are actually. Even when I was in Amsterdam, curiously, so when I came over to do the workshop, I actually managed to go, one of the things that was still happening was walking tours. So the museums were shut, but the walking tours were still happening because you could be separated out. And interestingly, the fellow that walked us around Amsterdam, showing us all the beautiful things, talked about just that, the embarrassment of the Dutch psyche that is very present to the fact that all of that continued wealth and welfare of the Dutch people is absolutely founded on the most despotic, despicable behaviours of previous relatives.
Okay. So what you're saying is that sort of inquiry is that this vision that we are parts of things, is that we're not a an eye, that we're many little eyes. And
Yeah.
when you take that distance, it helps you to treat it in a more dispassionate way. I love the word dispassionate. You know, where you're not having to judge any one of them, that they're all given a sequence.
I am both a deeply caring, concerned person, and I can also be a very asleep, not looking, carrying on buying the thing because I want it, and ignoring, where that's come from and what that's actually all about. We are all, arguably, in the West, those things.
So how do you avoid staggering under the weight of too much information with all these voices coming at you?
It's difficult, isn't it? Pass. I think,
You're passing on that question?
yeah, I'm not sure how to answer
You're
that.
welcome to, you can. Maybe we can approach it in a different way. I mean, you know, yeah, no, how do you, what, you say about what you want to
I
pass?
can. I tell you what. I think that being human and being relatively sentient beings is a heck of a difficult thing. We're here, and what are we meant to be doing? Especially in all this, So what am I meant to be doing? What's valuable? What's purposeful? What's useful? What's desirable? What's fun? And I think all humans are asking themselves that. So I'm here. I've got maybe 80 years. What am I going to do with it? Teenagers, what are going to go to university to study? What am I useful for? What is wanted of me? What am I good at? These are really difficult questions, apart from all the rest of the things that you're bringing up. And I think that's why we see a lot of addictions. So the lover quarter is all about addiction. So traditionally, drinking a lot, going to the pub a lot, being distracted, watching football, getting involved in sports or whatever. These are all distractions from feeling this ennui, this deep discomfort. And I have found it very interesting because in the last 9 months, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I've kind of really pared things down and made things clear. And without that busyness of distraction or numbing out, you're kind of left with, well, what have I got left? And then COVID happens as well. And it's really like, wow, gosh, who am I? Am I sustaining myself? Am I making myself laugh? Am I really pleased with that? And it's tough. And I think,
I have a ritual that I do, and I do it almost every night. And I put my son to sleep, and I go immediately and grab the book that I want to read, and I put it next to me, and I go, but I'll just check my messages, and I'll spend the next. Basically, it's an excuse to read, and I know this sort of nobility. I want to read because I want to learn, all this kind of thing. The one that is the loudest one of I want to look at a shiny thing moving past my eyes repeatedly. Just keep the shiny thing going. Yeah, that's much more comforting than reading the collected works of James Hillman, for example.
Well, also our shiny things with all their various apps of, they're all dopamine hitters, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so there are sort of current little drugs.
But what makes me do it is that just that thing that you're saying is that I go, oh, it's the evening. There's nothing now. I've fulfilled my responsibility. I mean, some close to me in my life may disagree, but I fulfilled my responsibilities as a father and husband to some respect. And now I'm like, oh, but now it's going to be bed in 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. I'll read a bit. I'll make myself better. Oh, phone, and then I end up on my phone.
It is difficult. I mean, if I think about the journey of this, I think what I experienced with people was that they were very much in their magician quarter. So it was a lot of, seeing, reading, thinking, strategizing, options. How are we going to manage this extraordinary event? So for me, it felt like a really complicated game of chess. So if I put that one there, then, oh no, I can't do that. Oh no, I can't do that. So, really trying to work out how, up into my head, how am I going to manage this? Fear is in me, how am I going to manage this, my loved ones, my people, how are we going to organize ourselves so that we're safe? And then I think I experienced a fair amount of grief coming in. Deaths were happening, jobs were being lost, businesses were being shut. There's a lot of loss going on. So there was, a lot of a hit. People were taking a hit, and feeling the punch of that. And then it almost feels like it swung down to warrior, and then people getting angry, getting fucked off about it, and sort of starting fisticuffs and fights, and even seeing fights online about, oh, it's all a conspiracy. No, it isn't. People are dying. Sort of people starting to really bust and rumble with one another. And for what I see is, never more have we needed great sovereignty, either the ability to be a really great ruler of myself as I navigate my way through this journey.
Your own kingdom, your own.
Yeah. So feeling my fear and being really wise around that, feeling my own losses, and supporting myself with those, feeling my anger and setting very strong, decent boundaries to keep me and my loved ones safe. But this sovereignty is, all about, and even in all of that, how can I bring joy? How can I bring a sense of a journey, an adventure, fun, play, and so on to this experience? So not just having cleaned the space and made the meals and sort of met all the needs, especially when you're feeling in that slightly attacked space. It can be quite difficult to then think, okay, let's play a game. let's create some playtime. And I'm aware that a lot of people have been incredibly creative, doing online, families doing online charades games, or Sunday quiz. People have been really creative, but I also get a sense that people are really tired now. I mean, for myself, I spend a lot of hours during the day on a Zoom platform. I am less and less likely to want to, even if it's for a game, socialize in the evening back on a screen. I'm even finding it hard to watch a film. I just so want to get away from that interface and that distance with a screen. So yeah, in all of this, how to still be having fun.
I think it's really interesting you mentioned tiredness there, because that seemed to be just the emotional processing of those months. Just the fact that all this was happening at such a pace seemed to me just made everyone dead tired. And I remember a couple of people saying, I said, oh, we're just so tired. And people said, why? And I was like, can't I be tired? As though admitting tiredness, these were friends. And like admitting tiredness itself was the sense that I wasn't on top of my game. That even, I should be so illustriously enlightened that I should be independent of any tiredness. Like, no, I'm just tired. I want to, I'm taking exercise, but I just want to rest. Yeah.
It's shattering, though. This brand new frightening thing has shipped up, this global, I was going to say enemy, but I don't really think of it as, this global thing that is occurring. So trying to, people, bless us, trying to keep up with the news, or trying to keep up with the latest statistics, or understanding where it's traveled. Oh gosh, it is exhausting. It's
keeping up. That's the thing. And it wasn't just keeping up with the news. It was, parents trying to tell their work. You weren't allowed to tell your work that you were actually taking care of a kid for half the day. It was like you were maintaining for a long time. And there was this lovely relief when the kind of collective pretense broke down, and people just started going, yeah, guess what? I'm going to answer your email tomorrow. And I sent, like, from the messages I was getting from friends, that everyone just drew a line and just went, yeah, you're not going to get that today. That's unrealistic. Yeah, it was nice, It was nice.
It's been shattering. And I think, I don't know, I was struck by your haircut and your shave, and, the fact that you've actually been to the barbers. I don't think anywhere like that is open yet in England.
speaking
No.
from, I'm in the Netherlands for people who don't know. Yeah, we have hairdressers here. They're doing a roaring trade.
I bet they are. Yeah, I think the pubs opened on Saturday in a curious way, but I think we've still got a long way to go, and I sense the collective, we're exhausted over here. We're tired, need something to change, and yet I really get that people really yearn for something to change, and yet not quite sure how that looks. There's fear here. There's fear of how to move out, how to re-emerge, how can we be together again.
I'm going to ask you again. We've got a few minutes left, but I want to. I love what you're saying about how can we be together again. But I want to return to the question that you sort of passed on, but then answered some way. But what maybe this will help. When you're just Catherine and the Zoom calls are done and you've done what's needed to be done with your son and all the la 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 la, what's the first voice you listen to? What do you tune into first to sort of organize all the other parts of you?
I have worked a lot in shadow work sessions that I've done with others, and I'm very almost amused these days by if there's any predatorial voices in my head, any parts that come and bite my ankles, I see them for what they are and kind of go, oh, not you again. The part might go, oh God, I can't believe you did that, or that wasn't very good, or it's been like going to the gym, but developing a voice that is really kind to me. I mean, during this time, and I know, my father died. My father died a month after I got home. I remember speaking to you about it in Amsterdam. So my father died and had to organise a funeral for him via Zoom. And there's been a lot of things that have been very complicated in my life. And it's about having, really caring for myself as much as I can in this. And I mean, really for myself, because there is, I've got children in the house. There's no other adult here. So after I've done a long day's work and I really appreciate myself and others like me that during this, we do have our own stuff going on, and yet we are stepping up to support others. And you can only do this if you have really gotten a hold of yourself, because in order for me to spend all those hours online, listening and helping and supporting and recalibrating and blessing and sending out, into the world with as much support as I could possibly muster for each and every one, at the end of that, there's me and my staff. And so a lot of long hot baths, a lot of early nights, a lot of really making sure I eat and hydrate well, fresh air, all the obvious things. And it's difficult. And I've got a 2-week break coming up in August, and I'm really looking forward to dropping and just no clients, no children, nothing. See, where am I going to go and what I'm going to do? I have no idea. Go and camp in the middle of a field on my own. I don't know. But yeah, and there's something about attending to my own grief, because I feel that in so many ways I've sort of parked that. So
because you had to hold something like this. Yeah.
I think during the whole of this time I have stayed in high magician, high sovereign, high warrior, and I've kind of parked the parts of me that really are very upset for now, because I feel like I can't attend to them just yet, and I want to turn up to work without a great big puffy snotty face. I find it's best. And
it's the aesthetics. It's the aesthetics that you're concerned about most. Yes,
absolutely. I just look pretty.
I think that's a lovely little place to end on, is talking about the kindness and softness and the self-appreciation that's at the heart of this, the kind of lifting the lid, that we don't sort of become warriors laying torch to these very soft and as you say, like, these things in the end, they're frightened. At the root, it's probably something in you that's deeply afraid. You're not going to get at it by sort of wielding the knife, as it were.
No, I'm very clear about that. Us humans would do well to be strengthening the parts of us that are really deeply kind to ourselves and to others. And I see a lack of that, and we need more. So,
Catherine, thank you so much for making time to be with us. I wish we had more time. I wish you a really wonderful holiday. Thanks so much for the work that you're doing. I'm so glad that we're in touch and have this sense of fellowship in the various activities. People, you can see Catherine's work below. I'm posting a link. If any part of this conversation resonates, please leave a comment below or get in touch with Catherine via her fabulous looking website. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being with us. Anyone who's listening, blessings and much kindness upon you. And once again, thanks to Catherine. Lovely to spend this time with you.
Great to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.